हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ Sundarji, it's all yours.
Thank you, Ji. Hello and welcome to this session, which is a small or brief introduction to yoga. So I thought we'll take a couple of minutes to understand what yoga is and its origins, and also go into Yoga Shastra and Yoga Sutra. Right? Yoga Sutra is of Patanjali, and Yoga Shastra is the Vedantic. The Bhagavad Gita is also Yoga Shastra. So I'll start with an invocation to Patanjali, who is a propounder of the Yoga Sutras or the Yoga Darshana. And this is a very nice invocation, so I'll start from here. Om Yogena Chittasya Padena Vacham Malam Sharirasya Cha Vaidyakena Yopakaruttam Pravaram Muninam Patanjalim Pranjaliranatosmi Abahu Purushakaram Shankachakrasidharinam Sahasrashirasam Shvetam Pranamami Patanjalim. Harihi Om. Now today we'll see the human evolution and idea of an afterlife, and then we'll visit darshanas and the darshana model, specifically the Sankhya Yoga Darshana, which forms the basis of yoga, and go into the Yoga Sutras and Yoga Shastra. Yoga Shastra, that is the Gita, has a majority of this model, as we'll see as we go. And we'll also talk about qualifications, diet, observance, and who can do yoga, what is the purpose of yoga, and all. And feel free to ask me any questions in between. So this time there won't be any quiz, and we'll just start. So a few questions that people will say when I talk about yoga, or when we talk about yoga, is yoga can give you peace of mind. So many people say I take up yoga for peace of mind. So can yoga give you peace of mind quickly? Many people will say yes, but the answer is yoga cannot give you peace of mind. Yoga or peace of mind is not a product of yoga, but it's a prerequisite for yoga. Meaning, when you have peace of mind, you can meditate. You cannot meditate and then get peace of mind. You understand the difference, right? And we'll see how that peace of mind can be attained by mind control, or controlling the aberrations of the mind. The next question is, can anyone do yoga? And in today's parlance, when you say yoga, people automatically think of postures or asanas and say, yeah, anybody can do it, or it applies to everybody. But Yoga Sutras or even the Darshanas say that there is a particular set of people who can do it, because there is some qualifications necessary. You have to go through the yamas and niyamas, prepare yourself bodily, you have to prepare yourself spiritually, and then start with the dharana, dhyana, samadhi slowly. And are there any shortcuts to yoga? We'll see that as we go along. At this point, I won't answer that question, and we'll also see how we benefit from yoga. Now, this is a basic architecture diagram, or the basic diagram of how we see Dhārmika or the Sanatana Dharma, and how it relates to the Sankhya Yoga model. So, all Hindu text, I don't like to use the word Hindu, but Sanatana Dharma, all Dharmic text rests on the body of text called Shruti. Shruti is basically Apaurusheya, which is, it is not human created, as they say. It is principles that were given to us by rishis, mantra drashtas or tattva drashtas. They are Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and Atharva. And these are divided into a mantra portion, a brahmana portion, aranyaka portion, and Upanishads. So that forms the basic Shruti. So somebody is saying they're not able to see the presentation on the screen. Is that true? Prashantji? Is everybody able to see? Okay, good. Okay. So based on the Shrutis, you have 6 Vedangas, which is Siksha, Vyakaranam, Jyotisham, Kalpam, Niruktan, and Chandas. And based on those same Shruti, there are various Smritis that came about, which is Manusmriti, Parasara Smriti, Vishnu Smriti, Narada Smriti, and all. And Bhagavad Gita, when it comes to Prasthana, is considered to be a Smriti Prasthana. And of these, we also had darshanas or viewpoints. There were 6 Astika darshanas and many Nastika darshanas also. Of the major Astika darshana, we had Nyaya Shastra of Nyaya Darshana of Gautama, and then you had Kanada Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, Mimamsa, and Vedanta. Quickly going into Nyaya, I won't go deeply into it. It's basically getting to the point of splitting everything and taking away the unnecessary till we get to the core of any matter. Tarka Shastra is part of this Nyaya. So it has 16 padarthas or 16 elements, and pramana and other things, what we talk about pertains to this. It's extreme logic and reasoning. I will come to that and in one of the slides later about logic and reasoning. Vaisheshika by Rishi Kanada, he is also called Uluka Bhatta. So he proposed that the entire world or the visible world is made of atoms, and he said 2 atoms make a dvayanu, 3 atoms make a trayanu, and so on, till many atoms combine and make a small fiber, many fibers make a thread, many threads make a blanket. So the atomic model, when we say Anu Paramanu Tattva, so that comes from Kanada Vaisheshika. And what are these all? Why are we talking about all this? Is these darshanas explain the creation in their own way. Kapila proposed a model based on 2 things. One is Prakriti and Purusha. I'll show the slide later, but I'll just mention it. But none of these actually talked about Ishvara as in a personal God. So they try to propose the model without a personal God, whereas Patanjali and Badarayana accept Ishvara as for a while. So all of Yoga Sutra or yoga is based on the Vedic understanding, and it's directly correlated to the Vedas. So it is a very, very Astika Darshana. Right. So here I just made a quick summary. So you have Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, Mimamsa, and Vedanta. They all consider Vedas to be valid. And there are 3 other darshanas, Jaina, Bauddha, and Charvaka. There were many others, but these are the major ones, which did not consider Veda to be valid. It considered them to be unnecessary or not a pramana. And there is a difference between this and considering Ishvara valid. So, was there a question? And of these 6 darshanas, Nyayam, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Purva Mimamsa, they don't consider Ishvara, and neither does Jaina, Bauddha, or Charvaka. So there are 2 darshanas, that is yoga, that says Ishvara is valid. And Uttara Mimamsa or Vedanta, I put it this way because Ishvara is taken to be a placeholder till a point. He is valid within the transactional world in a relative sense. Right? So far it's clear? Okay. Then we can move on to the model of yoga, which is the Prakriti and Purusha. If you see, most of you understand this Prakriti Purusha model, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So Prakriti is inert matter and Purusha is non-material consciousness. And Kapila Muni, he proposed this model because we see matter and there is something other than matter that is seem to be interfacing with matter, consciousness, or soul, or you can give it any other name, but that's definitely non-material. And you can see this model also being used in the Bhagavad Gita and all. So Prakriti and Purusha model. But the conclusion of this is different. It's not the same. If you see Nirvana Shatkam, you'll see Mano Buddhi Ahankara Chittani Naham. Right? Nacha Shrotra Jihve, Nacha Grana Netre, that comes here. Nacha Vyoma Bhumir Natejo na Vayu. Then it comes Chidananda Rupas Shivoham Shivoham. It comes to the Purusha. When I say Purusha, it's the Vedantic Purusha, not the Sankhya. Nonetheless, this model is the basis of what we are going to see in Yoga Sutra and the Yoga Shastra. Okay. Now, coming back to Nyaya, there is one question that, it's an interesting question. Now, I'll show a photo of this and say, this is a white dog. Most of you agree? Do you agree this is a white dog? No trick question here. A simple question.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a white dog. Okay. Now, I'll show this and say, this is a black cat. Would you say it's a black cat?
No.
No.
Is it 100% false, or is it somewhat false, or is it completely true?
100% false, I should say.
100% false, right? Now, if you ask a Tarkika, he will say you're not 100% false, you're only 20% false. Now, why is that? Because he takes this sentence and analyzes it. Now, this, I'm pointing to a cat, okay, this, fine, is, the isness is there, so it exists. It's not 20 cats, it's one cat, so A is also correct. Cat, it's not a hippopotamus, it's a cat. So all these four are correct. The only wrong thing is the color, black. So I don't have to reject the entire sentence. I just have to reject that portion which is not pertinent, right? So instead of saying this is not a black cat is 100% false, I just say this is a cat, but it is not black, and just take that point and change it. So that's how sentences are analyzed. And this is not the only way, but Tarka Shastra is used to analyze a lot of even if, but, commas, full stops, everything. So every part of the Veda has been analyzed through Tarka Shastra, and including sutras. Every sutra is analyzed using that. So we'll come to see that when people say, this ideology is not the same as the other, we'll have to see which portions match and which portions don't. Talking about that is Vedanta and Yoga. Now, they are not completely mismatching. It's only the conclusion part where there is a contention. And that contention also is solved in the Brahma Sutra Vashyas and Brahma Sutras, so to speak. So both accept Ishvara. Now, Vedanta accepts Ishvara, but within the transactional world. Prakriti Purusha model is used in both. And both have a 24 Tattva Prakriti. So we saw previously, there are 24 Tattvas. It's 5 Tanmatras, 5 Bhutas, 5 Jnanendriyas, 5 Karmendriyas. Then you have Mano, Buddhi, Ahankara, Chitta. And the contention part is Patanjali and Kapila believe that Prakriti is real and it is distinct from the Purusha. Whereas we, as in the Vedanta says, Prakriti is not an absolute reality, it's a relative reality. And Purusha, as described by the multiplicity of Purusha, is not real, it's absolute non-dual. So there is that contention. And yoga, according to Yoga Sutra, is achieved by stilling the Chitta Vritti. We'll see that in the next slide. And Vedanta believes that moksha comes through jnana, because the problem arises through ajnana. So any questions here before we move? Or am I going too fast?
No, it's perfect.
Okay, good. Now I'll begin with the Yoga Sutra themselves. Yoga Sutra, the first of any sutra has a purpose statement. So if you look at the Brahma Sutra, it's Athato Brahma Jignasa, or you have Athato Dharma Jignasa. Narada Bhakti Sutra has Atha Bhaktim Vyakyasyamaha. So here Patanjali says Atha Yoga Anushasanam is the first one, which is we now have instruction about yoga. And the way any sutra is written is, it is not like a mystery novel where you have all those pieces and then finally in the last chapter everything comes together in a mystery novel. Here it is the other way around. First, they don't waste your time. They give you the subject matter. The final conclusion always comes right away. So if a person can understand this one sutra, you don't need any of these. For a person who is not intelligent enough to understand the second sutra, you have a bhashya or the commentary starting from here. And if you're not able to understand this, then go to this. If you're not able to understand this, then keep on going. That's how the sutras are normally written. If you see the Brahma Sutra, the first 4 sutras, the Chatushloki, is the entire Brahma Sutra. You're done. Whatever follows that is a commentary on the 4th sutra. So here, Patanjali defines yoga as Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Done. So with that, your definition of yoga is done, which is yoga is stilling the vritti or the aberrations in the mind. So if I can think of mind as a medium, let's say mind as a body of water or some medium, and any wave caused in that, wave needs a medium to travel. So any wave caused in that is taken as a chitta vritti. That can be taken as a thought or a distraction or some kind of an aberration in the mind, right? So when all that aberrations of the mind stops, yoga is achieved. Now, somebody will ask, okay, what happens when all the aberrations are stopped? Then the 3rd sutra comes in. So when all my mind is fully still, tatha drashtu swarupe vasthanam, meaning then the drashtu, which is the seer, stands in himself or in herself as herself, as in swarupa. The drashtu swarupa is atma swarupa, right? Vedantic parlance is atma swarupa. I can see myself, or I remain as myself when all the chitta vrittis are stilled. Now what happens when it is not stilled? Vritti sarupyam itaratra. The drashtu or the seer identifies with the scene or the objects. Now I'll take a couple of minutes here to bring this back to something called drishya viveka. For those who have not read, it's Adi Shankaracharya's one of the texts that we should read over and over, or at least read till you understand, is the difference between I as the seer and the objects that are seen. Now, a majority of our problems with focusing or tensions or mood swing comes because we are very easy to get triggered into some emotion. We give full control to external objects to control how we think and how we act. Once we identify what these trigger factors are and also see how we can quell them, meditation is easier to be achieved. So all this prelude is to understand how to meditate properly and how systematically we can get rid of or detox the mind level. So once we detox it, we can start setting time aside to sit and meditate with discipline to achieve a very specific goal, and we'll come to see what the goal is in later slides. Okay, so for now we say when meditation doesn't happen, as in like when we are talking, when we are walking, when we are sleeping, the I won't use drashtu, seer and all from this point on to make it much simpler. When in normal sense I identify myself with all these external aberrations, so you say I get angry, I am happy, I am sad, right? So instead of saying I feel angry, you say I am angry. So you identify yourself with the emotions, and uh, you allow yourself to be swung by these emotions. And the fifth sutra here says these vrittis, or these mental aberrations, are of 5 types. Vrittaya panchataya klishta. So some are easy, or klishta literally means easy, difficult. Klishta. Some are tough, some are easy, some are not easy. So varying degrees of ease of these 5 vrittis. These vrittis are pramana, viparyaya, vikalpa, nidra, and smriti. We'll see what these 5 are. Pramana is verifiable cognition. Now in this group we have talked about pramana a lot. But pramana is any source of knowledge that can verify, objectively verify something. For example, the color of the cat. Now if 2 people in a room have completely different understanding of what that color is. One says it's a white cat, one says it's a gray cat, and there is no conclusive evidence between the 2 of them, unless there is an objective way. So if I have a color code, a book with color code, and says this is gray color, this is white color, you can refer to it. So that becomes a shabda. Or you can get a person who understands color, who is fair, and then he says, okay, this is gray and this is white and this is black. So it becomes aptavakya, right? Because one person could be, or both people could be colorblind. So how do you verify that question? So it has to be a third party. So pramana is a verifiable source of knowledge. A source of knowledge that can verify an object of cognition. Viparyaya means delusion. Delusion, we all understand what it is. And vikalpa means imagination. There's a small difference between vikalpa, that is imagination, and viparyaya. So in imagination, I imagine certain things and I know it is untrue. Whereas in delusion, I imagine certain things and I completely believe it is true. That's the only subtle difference there. When you start believing in the imagination, let's say you imagine a tiger entering the room, that's imagination. If you really scream and start running about thinking there is a real tiger there, that's delusion, right? So, nidra is sleep and smriti is memory. The way Patanjali defines this is pratyaksha, anumana, agama, pramanani. Pratyaksha, anumana, and agama. These 3 are on the pramanas according to Yoga Sutra. So there is no artha apatti, there is no anupalabdhi and all. So pratyaksha, anumana, agama, not even upamana. Viparyaya mithya jnanam atadrupa pratishtam, meaning mithya jnana, and when it's not here, the delusion occurs. Shabda jnananupati vastu shunyo vikalpaha. So past memory that is brought about in the absence of the object itself is defined as imagination. So all imagination is your mind getting back to past impressions or impressions made up out of past memory, and that object is not right in front of you. So that is called a vikalpa. Nidra, abhava pratyayalambana vritti, is absence of any vritti at that point. So any vritti being in potential state is deep sleep. And this is very interesting. I like this. Smriti is anubhuta vishaya asampramosha smriti. That is, some things that you have already understood, or things you have experienced, or things you have heard. Anubhuta vishaya asampramosha, not letting go of things you have stored in your mind, is called memory. The reason I like this is, even though you have understood something as a child and or a past experience, sometimes we forget it because the mind has let it go. And sometimes things that have happened in the childhood, you still remember it because the mind, it's in a potential form stored somewhere in the mind. You have not let it go. So this can be good and bad. On the good side, good childhood experiences could have translated into good memories, and traumatic experiences would have translated into really traumatic or bad scars that people carry around, and all their fears, all their judgments would be based on some scars from the past. Not sanskara, some scars from the past. English. So the question is, okay, these are all great. I mean, I understand pramana, viparya and all, but how does it really help me? Like as in human beings are driven by triggers, external triggers. So from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep, especially in this age, you have an information overload. So there is hardly any time for us to get any, any rest. Even while traveling, or even while standing in a bus stop, or even while, sitting in a dinner table, people always check their phone, the Twitter or Facebook, or something to read or input into their memory. There's no time given for the mind to relax. And then people expect to have a sound sleep and a good peaceful mind, which contradicts. Action and expectations don't match. But is there a way you can quell the mind or control the mind? Patanjali says yes. And I like this because it also relates to Bhagavad Gita. So the definition of, or the way to control the mind is Abhyasa Vairagyabhyam Tan Nirodha. Means Abhyasa is practice, Vairagya is dispassion. Now, why do I say it relates to Bhagavad Gita is in chapter 6 of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asks a question. Chanchalam hi manak Krishna pramati bhalavadridam tasyaham nigraham manye vayuriva sudushkaram. As in, hey Krishna, this mind is extremely difficult to control. And even controlling the wind is easy, but controlling the mind is extremely difficult. And Krishna immediately replies. He doesn't say, hey Arjuna, what a silly man you are. There are so many yogis who control their mind and all. He doesn't say that. When Arjuna says the mind is difficult to control, like a perfect management guru, and this is something that we all can learn from and use in our daily life. Krishna's first word is asamshayam mahabaho, mano durnigraham chalam, abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha gruhyate. He doesn't counter Arjuna. He says, definitely Arjuna, I understand that you are absolutely right. Mind is very difficult to control. Who is saying this? Not Sri Krishna, but Bhagavan himself. Because first you admit or understand the questioner's point of view, right? And then he says, Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha gruhyate. With abhyasa and some vairagya, you can control it. That's what is said here. Abhyasa vairagyabhyam tam nirodha. So the reason I like that shloka is it gives you a very good perspective of how to handle any contradicting question and answer it in a way that the listener will understand it. Never counter the logic, but try to understand why the person is using the logic, right? So when we come to Gita, we'll talk more about that. But here, with abhyasa, with practice, and with vairagya, we can control it. Now, this is the model we were talking about earlier, as in the mano buddhi ahankara. So, for many of us who understand Vedanta, there is a witness and there is a shield or a veil that covers the fact that there is a witness, and all the vrittis are very external because our outlook is all external. So when I look at the world, okay, I'll come to that. We'll come to that in the question answer, Ji, Bina Ji. So when I look at the world, I look at it through the buddhi, the manas, and the sense organs. So I and you could be looking at the same exact scene, but the way I perceive it would be different from the way you perceive it. In the sense, my past bias would come into play, and your past bias would come into play in convoluting what we exactly see. For example, two people from different religions, let's say, witness some act, and one would see that as a great act and some would see that as a bad thing. So good and bad in itself is very subjective, or the perception of good and bad is subjective, but that all happens, the subjectiveness all happens in this area, the manas buddhi, right? So now we'll go to the objection that was raised. Binaji, I heard that there was a agree to disagree.
No, that was in context to we were talking earlier about NASA and Vairagya.
Which one?
No.
Abhyasa Vairagya.
Yeah, no. Before that, there is a statement that says that to get going, in the interactions in the world, what we need to have is agree to disagree.
Oh, we have to agree to disagree is what you said.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, this is what, like it's a concept that is you were talking about, and I just agreed with it to say that, yeah, that's a concept usually picked up, in our transactions,
Okay.
where we would have to agree, and then to disagree, we agree first. I mean, that was just a passing,
Okay.
yeah, nothing to do with this. Yeah.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
Now, all my aberrations as a perceiver is filtered. It's very filtered. And see, normally when I'm wearing, let's say we wear glasses, right? Even if it is sunglasses, and if the sunglass is dirty, or if it is blue, or if it is white, or if it is green, how do you see the world? You see it through the glasses, and any imperfection in the instrument will distort how you see the world, correct? Same way, if the mind is full of toxins, full of thoughts or biases and judgments, or the buddhi is full of judgments, sorry, the mind is full of biases, that is how you're going to see the world. So a person with a healthy mind can see the world in a healthy way than a person with an unhealthy mind. And that is where all this Trigunatmika Maya comes, where you have the Sattva, Rajas, Tamas and all. We'll not go into the Sattva, Rajas for now. We'll just go into how we can cleanse the mind and the buddhi point, and probably see a little about what pranayama pratyahara is, but we will not go too deep into the asanas part, because that is more Swami Swatma Rama's Hatha Yoga Pradipika. We'll see Patanjali's definition is only 2 words for yoga. Sorry, for asanas. Now the same thing here has been given in a different model. So you have the seer here in the middle, clouded by the buddhi, and the buddhi gets its input from the manas, the trigunatmika, and these have trigger points. So kama, krodha, lobha, or desire, anger, greed, arrogance, delusion, envy. There could be other things. So all these things are external triggers, or triggers that can cause aberrations or waves in the mind. So the more your mind vibrates, the more it is agitated, the more the core gets affected. We are not talking about the Purusha, we are talking about this layer. So your worldview will be completely dependent on how healthy you keep this part, right? The Buddhi Manas combination. And Patanjali has certain 8-step plan to detox that part. Now we talked about the mind, and there are 5 states of mind which Vyasa gives. So there is supposed to be a Vyasa Bhashya for Patanjali Yoga Sutra. And I heard, I have not read it, but I've heard that there is a Shankara Bhashya for this Vyasa Bhashya also. Sorry, it could be not a Tippani, but Vivarana or something. But there is a commentary upon that commentary. That's what I've heard. I have not seen it. So the mind, when I start to meditate, let's say a person who is completely new to meditation sits for meditation. The first thing is the mind is in this state where the mind is scattered, like you have no clue what's happening. You close your eyes, okay, now what? Now what? Okay. So I don't know what's going to happen. And that's because the mind is so scattered. It has no intention or idea of what to do next. The reason for that is we are all very action driven. So basically human beings do something and expect a result. That is how we are so trained to do from our childhood. We are not born this way, but we are trained to do this way. And same thing in meditation. Now you sat. So what do I do next to get peace of mind is what we think. So you're not supposed to do anything. If thoughts come, don't restrain them. Just let them go. Let the thoughts come. No worries. Just observe them and see what is happening as an impartial, objective observer, and the thoughts will vanish by themselves. If you get involved in trying to suppress the thought and not trying to think, you're still trying. You're still doing something. So not doing is the first exercise. So the scattered mind, which is the Kshipta state, will slowly start to settle, right? And this needs a very consistent and disciplined practice. So try to pick the same time of the day, let's say 6 p.m. or 10 p.m. or 6 a.m., whichever suits your schedule. But it has to be at the same time every single day. So what happens with that is the consistency. Your bio clock gets set. And when it is 6 a.m., let's say after, say, 2 months or 1.5 months, at the same time of the day, you'll automatically start to settle down and meditate. And if you skip your meditation for 1 or 2 days, you somehow feel weird. It's like brushing your teeth. The moment you wake up, you brush your teeth. And it was not an easy practice when your mother started when you were a kid. You know, why should I brush my teeth? And because I told you so. So that's where it starts. And then people get into the habit of brushing the teeth, and one day you skip it, you feel kind of weird. You don't eat till you have brushed it. Same thing with meditation. At first, it's a very forced routine. Sorry about that. So at first it's a very forced routine, and then with discipline it starts becoming your second nature, and then nobody has to tell you. You know, at 6 a.m. you're there, your mind is not scattered, it's starting to settle down. But the mind is a very funny animal. Okay, it's like a child. So it's settled down, and now it does the opposite. Now it goes into the Muda state. So you're sitting there, you're not distracted, but you start falling asleep. Right? Then suddenly you wake up and think, okay, where's my time gone? So this happens, the Yoga Nidra, as they call it, or not even Yoga Nidra. People fall asleep in the beginning stages. So to overcome that, you have to remain alert and aware, as in not active alert, but just remain alert. Follow your, observe your breath, and make sure that you have that 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever your stamina goes at that point in time, to be there fully alert and make sure that you're not falling asleep and you're not in a Kshipta state. So once you cross this hurdle also, the mind will start picking up on distractions. Somebody opening the door, or the clock ticking, or a small paper crumbling, something, your mind will start picking out external distractions, or it will start creating its own internal distractions. Oh, I forgot the key somewhere else, or did I do this, or is the stove on? Something or the other, it will start distracting itself. For this, again, you'll have to start practicing, or this is one more hurdle to cross. And how do you cross this hurdle? For the external distractions, pick a quiet place and ignore all distractions. If the mind is distracted internally, as in it starts creating its own uh, distractions, and definitely when you're in this state, all the past thoughts, sublime thoughts, will start bubbling up. I mean, bubbling is an analogy, but it will start coming out. You'll have to let go of them. So there are multiple ways of letting go of the past thoughts. Some are scars that will come out, some are fears, some are insecurities. All these things will start boiling out, and you'll have to start letting go through various other practices, sadhanas. And when that is overcome, there is a state of ekagra. Ekagra is your mind is now able to concentrate on something for a long time without interruption. It could be anything. I find it funny sometimes when people do that candlelight sadhana, or some other sadhana where you look as in you see something and start focusing on it. It could be external for a beginner, and then it could be internal as the practice goes along. But finally, it will be self-awareness only. That is the final stage. Now, I'll just take probably 1 minute. Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, chapter 3, which is Vibhuti Pada, has extensive discussions on concentrating on various points. So, for example, if you concentrate on one point, you get strength of 1,000 elephants, or you can walk through walls, or you can walk on water, or all these things. It's called Vibhuti. And Patanjali finally says that all these things are byproduct of concentration. They are all useless. They are all temporary. Don't concentrate on any of these. Concentrate on self-awareness alone. Because he talks about the byproducts and then he rejects all of them as useless. I will not, again, as a rational mind, it's very difficult to prove or disprove any of that. So we will not be talking about the Vibhuti Pada. We'll just go into the Ekagra Chitta, which is very much possible, especially if you have kids who have a problem with focusing, or you are unable to focus on something else. Then it's very nice to follow this Shipta, the yoga, to get your mind at least to Ekagra, where you can focus on something without being interrupted externally. This saves you a lot of time. Right. And of late, we have also started seeing reports of kids with autism, or kids with low grades who do meditation and their grades improve. So this is very universally applicable. It doesn't have to pertain to any religion. It doesn't have to pertain to any a particular faith or belief. Yoga is universally acceptable, but it has its roots, as we spoke about, in the Shrutis. That's undeniable. But application is universal. Finally, after the Ekagra is the ability to concentrate on a particular spot or thought of your choosing. Now, at that point, it still has unipoint, right? You're concentrating on something. Now, you have to let go of that. Even that, you have to let go of the Ekagra also, to come to a point where it's totally controlled. Niruddha. Niruddha is your mind is under your control, and you can channel it to any thought at will, or you can control it from having any thoughts completely. So that is a point called Niruddha. It's very hard to achieve it. And again, as we spoke before, Abhyasa and Vairagya can help you achieve this state. Any questions here? Okay. Sorry about the throat. Now, before even starting on the first step of yoga, which is sitting in meditation, many people think you can have a 9 to 5 job, just come, drop your bags and then sit down for meditation. Not going to happen. Your mind also has to have certain disciplines, or so I call it detoxing them, before we begin yoga. So there are some qualifications as the first and second step. So we have the yamas and the niyamas. It's observation of certain norms, so to speak. So ahimsa. Ahimsa is trikarana. Trikarana is not harming anybody through actions, thoughts, or actions, thoughts, or speech. Right? That is ahimsa. You throw in mano. Trikarana shuddhi. Right? And satyam. Satyam is the ability to not ability. Satyam is telling the truth as is, as you see it. Right? You could be right or wrong, but that's you believe that this is how it is. Right? The reason I say you believe that is how it is Satyam is eternal truth is one meaning. That is absolute Satyam. But let us say to a villager who's never seen certain principles, he totally believes in his version, and he has to say things as his mind believes at that point in time. So that gives the ability to evolve. Now I'll stop here and just ask a quick question as to why Satyam is important. Why is telling the truth important? Because we see that people who lie seem to prosper in life, right? And people who tell the truth, somehow they get left behind or they get into trouble for telling the truth. So why on earth is Satyam so important? Anybody? Okay. Right. So what happens is, right, correct. So somebody said, Shashiji said that you least stress when you don't need to keep a record of all the lies. Correct. So when you tell a lie, it creates multiple versions of an incident in your brain, in your mind. So I tell you one version, I tell somebody else the other version, I tell somebody else the third version, and I have to remember who I told it to what. And it leads to one, stress, and it also leads to aberrations in the mind, right? Secondly, let us say I tell a person that somebody calls me for dinner on, say, Tuesday, and I say, okay, I'll come to your house, but I know that I won't. But I know that last minute I'll make some excuse. So what happens is, after a while, you yourself will stop believing in yourself, because your mind, your word is telling one thing, your mouth is telling one thing, your mind knows that it's the other. So the credibility of the mind, the consistency of the mind is now decreased. So in that, you have what is called fractured mind, right? So this fractured mind is also so scattered that it's difficult for it to sit and concentrate. When you have a very consistent mind, it's easier for you to gather it and make it unipointed. Ahimsa, Satyam, Asteyam. Asteyam is not stealing. Aparigraha is not wanting from anybody. Now all these, when you want something or when you steal something, this actually is based on desires. So you have some desire and you somehow want to get that by either begging or wanting or stealing it if need be. So that also has to be given up. No freebies. And brahmacharyam is a very misconstrued word. Brahmacharyam literally means self-restraint and following the path of the brahmacharya. But it's also taken to be abstinence from certain things. So a student life during which he has no desires for physical pleasures and also no desires for external distractions, thoughts, words, which will distract a person from what he has to achieve, the goal he has to achieve, the brahmacharya. So currently it's taken to be abstinence or continence, which is also important in the yama. But it doesn't mean, well, for grihasthas, we'll talk about it later, but brahmacharya is a very, very important one, where you have to live like the life of a student. And then you have Shuchi, Santosha, Tapas, Swadhyaya, and very importantly, Ishvara Pranidhana. So cleanliness, contentment, tapas, which is penance. So Bhagavad Gita has 3 kinds of tapas, like manas, vak, and it comes in 17th chapter. So it is speech, action, and words. How the tapas is done is in the 17th chapter. And Swadhyaya. Swadhyaya means study not by the self but also of the self. Like study of the self is Swadhyaya. And Ishvara Pranidhana is surrendering to Ishvara. And by this surrender, yoga is achieved. So that comes in a later chapter, I think chapter 2, where he says Samadhi is achieved by Pranidhana to Ishvara. And then comes asana. Now we have so many elaborate asanas. You have hot yoga, cold yoga, other yogas. And Patanjali's definition of asana is only 2 things. Sthira, Sukham, Asanam. Done. There is no major elaboration on how to twist or bend your body. All that comes under Swami Swatma Rama's Hatha Yoga Pradipika and other texts. So your body has to be stable and it has to be comfortable. So that's your asana, based on which you have regulation of prana. Sorry for the typo. But when you regulate the prana by controlling the breath itself is not control of prana. That is one of the methods that you can do voluntarily to control the prana. So when the body and the pranas are in control, the mind starts settling down. So up to this is the preparatory stage. And pratyahara is disengaging the senses from external triggers. Okay. So up to this, that's the preparation. And then it comes to the concentration part. This is where the meditation starts to take place. Up to this point, it's purely just external preparation for a very long time, and then once you've achieved pratyahara, then you can start dharana. Desha bandha chittasya dharana. So it has to be controlled. Your mind has to be starting to be controlled and focused on one point, that is dharana. And there comes dhyana. Dhyana is uninterruptedly or exclusively containing the mind and focusing it on that uni point, the ekagra, little past the ekagra, which leads you to samadhi. Samadhi is a state where where the purusha or the seer is self-effulgent. That's what it says. Tadevartha matra nirbhasam swarupa shunyam iva samadhi. Now that's where I was saying the shunya word. But it says where it's as if the purusha is missing and the self becomes effulgent. Effulgent is bringing light, and not physically, but it's self-evident. So that spot or that what do you call it? That situation or that experience, all these words fail me because it's limitation of the language. I'm not able to explain it rightly. But it is when the Purusha is self-effulgent and you feel nothing but 100% awareness only. Like I am. Not I am Brahman, I am this, I am that, but I am. And even that I am vanishes and you're full awareness. That's Samadhi. And back to Gita's, Yoga Shastra, the Bhagavad Gita. So chapter 6 exclusively deals with the Dhyana Yoga. So where there are eating and sleeping habits and how you have to moderate it, and how you have to be disciplined, and without discipline there is no yoga. It also goes a little beyond and says what happens if you start practicing yoga and then you give it up or leave it, and some people just give it up in half. What happens then? Yoga doesn't go waste, as in at some point later in a different life probably it'll start continuing, or even in the same life you can start continuing it, and it'll cumulatively add up from where you left off. So that is also talked about in chapter 6. Because we are talking about the Bhagavad Gita in another session, we won't go too deep into this for now. And it's also wise to read about the Daivasura Sampat Vibhaga Yoga. That is the qualifications and how to make yourself more Daivik than Asuric. And like I said earlier, the three gunas, the three kinds of tapas, is Gita chapter 17 verses 14 to 16. So anudvekakaram vakyam satyam priyahitam chayat. So for that is for the Vangmaya tapa, that is tapas of the speech. So each one has, and we can go in depth into this, but the idea for today was not to go deep into the yoga, but to tell or show how yoga is deeply connected to the Vedic roots. And yoga as a philosophy is not something that has no religion. It has no affiliations and other things. So that's some discussions that are going about, especially with next week being Yoga Day, that is 21st of May being Yoga Day. Yoga's applications are universal, but yoga's origins are not universal. Yoga's origin has a very, very documented origin, and that leads back to Shruti, right? Like we said, the applications, and I would highly encourage everybody, irrespective of their belief, time, place, to start taking a look at yoga itself, not just the physical part, but as an application to improve the quality of your outlook of life. Not improve the quality of life, which has no definition by itself, but your outlook itself will change, and it brings about a peace of mind. It brings about maturity. I won't say peace, but a maturity of mind, which takes care of everything else. So you won't stress about things. You won't get easily angered or depressed. Yoga is a very systematic way of bringing mind under your control, not giving the control to anybody else or anything else. And this can be achieved with dedication, devotion, and determination. It can be achieved. So that's the. Any questions or any comments? Welcome.
Thank you very much, Sundarji. This was a wonderful presentation. Like, I learned a lot, and I'm sure we all did as well.
Thank you.
If there are any questions, people
Yeah.
can.
Otherwise, we can conclude. Hari Om.
Somebody has a question.
Yeah. So do you want to keep it live, or we can take it offline?
What do you say?
We can take it offline, the
Okay.
questions.
Can we close with the Shanti Mantra and then
Sure.
go on to the okay.
Go ahead.
Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om